As president, I'll defend our cherished way of life.
These are images of Donald Trump's America today.
In Joe Biden's America, you and your family will never be safe.
America has always been full of hope and resolve.
Go and vote.
Good morning. I'm Jonathan Capehart, opinion writer for The Washington Post, and welcome to First Look, Washington Post Live's one-stop shop for news and analysis on the most pressing issues of the day, or news issues of the day. And this morning, we're focused on last night's vice presidential debate. As we have on many First Look mornings, we're starting with chief national correspondent and veteran political reporter and editor, Dan Balz. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning, Jonathan.
So I read your column this morning on the front page of the New York Post. Why don't you give the viewers I'm sorry, It was a late night and an early morning. Oh my God, what a horrible mistake. Marty, Fred, I'm so sorry. Mr. Bezos. The Washington Post, front page of the Washington Post. Give viewers a thumbnail of what you wrote today.
Well, I mean, I think the sum and substance of the debate was that the vice president, Mike Pence, came armed with a case he wanted to make against Joe Biden and the Democratic Party and Kamala Harris. But time and again, it was clear that what undermines that case most significantly is the person he works for, President Trump. That was obvious really from the get-go when the discussion focused on the coronavirus pandemic and the administration's handling of it. And the vice president, in essence, recycled statements that the president has made repeatedly over many, many months, which he himself has said, touting what they claim is a great record against all the evidence of how this country has a much higher death toll than any major industrialized country in the world. And as Senator Harris and moderator Susan Page both asked, why is that the case? So it was a tough night for him to try to do what he wanted to do. The administration, the campaign, the Trump folks would like to make this election a choice, not a referendum. But I think we were reminded again last night that it is a referendum on the president of the United States.
So Dan, let me get your thoughts on something. I mean, a lot of comments have been made about the fact that none of the questions asked by the moderator, Susan Page, were actually answered, particularly from Vice President Pence. But I think each candidate had a question that they were asked that they visibly dodged. When it comes to Vice President Pence, it was the idea of accepting a peaceful transfer of power. For Senator Harris, it was the question about adding members to the Supreme Court in response to a confirmation, an expected confirmation of Judge Amy Coney Barrett. Do you think the fact that Harris and Pence both dodged those questions will hurt either campaign?
Not particularly, but I thought it was quite revealing on both their parts. I think I say not particularly in part, Jonathan, because the electorate in this country, for the most part, people have made up their minds about where they stand, and people are already voting without necessarily watching these debates or even in spite of watching these debates. But I thought those were both very important moments. I mean, the issue of pledging a peaceful transfer of power is about as easy a question that a politician can get. And I think that the Mike Pence who existed before he became vice president would have had no trouble answering that in the affirmative. I think his problem is that the president will not commit to that, and the vice president is intensely loyal to him, often to a fault. And I think that makes it impossible for him to do what probably in his gut is the thing he should do, which is to say, yes, we will abide by the results of this election. I thought for Senator Harris, she too is following the lead of the person at the top of the ticket. Vice President Biden has resisted answering this question since it came up, since the nomination, or actually since the vacancy after the death of Justice Ginsburg. The fact that he will not answer it is obviously telling, and the fact that she would not do it last night is also telling. It's a pretty straightforward question. Would you do it? Would you consider it? He does not want to answer that question because he knows it would stir controversy. He'll have to deal with that issue if Judge Barrett is confirmed and he becomes president. because there will be pressure from a lot of parts of the Democratic Party to do exactly that.
Just before we came on air here online, the Commission for Presidential Debates announced that the next presidential debate that was supposed to be in Miami is going to be virtual. You've covered many debates over your career. What do you think that will do to the tenor and tone of that presidential debate?
Well, that and what happened last week are likely to make the tone of this coming debate somewhat closer to what last night was. But so much of that will depend on how the president decides to conduct himself. I mean, if he comes in again determined to be super aggressive, then we might have a repeat of that. I think it's a little harder when the two men will be in different locations. It is just harder to conduct that kind of performance when you're remote. So we'll see. I mean, I've always said to people that debates depend on the attitude of the participants. If people come to debate, they will debate. If they choose to come to be disruptive, they will be disruptive. They will do what they think is in their political interest. And so I think we will have to wait and see what the president decides he wants to do in the next debate. But it will certainly feel different. Now, part of the debate will be held in Miami. The citizens in the town hall will be in Miami, as will Steve Scully, who is the moderator for that debate. But the two principals will not be, and they will be in different locations.
Dan, last night, people always talk about, and I think you may have mentioned this in your column in the Washington Post, that vice presidential debates don't usually have that much of an impact on the race. But last night, because the two principals of the campaigns are both in their 70s, do you think people were looking at this debate and looking at these two candidates as potential presidents? And do you think they succeeded in telegraphing that message, particularly Senator Kamala Harris, who, compared to Vice President Pence, is still relatively unknown in that regard?
I think it would have been impossible for most people to watch that debate and not think about the fact that one of those two could end up as president before 2024. I mean, you were dealing with two older men with some health issues, particularly the president right now, but Vice President Biden has had health issues in the past. So I think everybody who came to that debate was looking at them with that in mind. I also think really from the beginning, since she was nominated or chosen by Vice President Biden to be the running mate, that Senator Harris has been seen as somebody who is capable and ready to be president if she is asked to step in. I think that her background, her record, her visibility, the fact that she has run for president helped equip her to pass that bar. So I think that last night's performance only probably reinforced that with the public.
Dan, I'm going to end our discussion here with a grave question, and that is, in all your years of political reporting, conventions, debates, presidential campaigns, have you ever seen a situation as surreal as a fly landing on a candidate's head in the middle of a most important moment of their career?
I can't remember one. There may well have been one. Strange creatures, get into open halls and do things, but I can't remember one. And particularly landing, a fly landing on the head of a white-haired man. So there was no missing what was happening, and whether the vice president, if he knew it, he was well composed, and perhaps he didn't even realize what had happened.
Well, Twitter being what it is, the fly had a Twitter account and thousands of followers within moments of that happening. Dan, we've got to go. Thank you very much, as always, for coming on First Look this morning.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Let's go over to the opinion side of the paper, where you'll find my colleagues, Washington Post Deputy Editorial Page Editor Ruth Marcus, and contributing columnist Marc Thiessen. Ruth, Mark, good. Oh, Karen Tumulty. Oh my gosh. know what? This show, viewers, I am so sorry. But Karen Tumulty, thank you very much for being
Karen, I
here.
didn't know
Mark,
you went to the New York Post.
already off the rails like the first debate. Well, you know what? I just saw about, what is this, 8:09? So 7 minutes ago, President Trump was on Fox News Business, and he said he's not going to participate in a virtual debate. As I was just talking about with Dan Balz earlier, the Commission on Presidential Debates announced that the next week's debate that was supposed to be in Miami between President Trump and Vice President Biden will be virtual. Now the president is saying he's not going to participate in a virtual debate. Marc Thiessen, let me start with you. Can he? I mean, obviously he can do that, but is it to the president's advantage to do that? Shouldn't he show up for a debate, given where he is in the polls?
Well, if his doctors clear him, there's no reason to have a virtual debate. So it's very simple. If either his doctors have said that he's not transmitting disease and that he's okay, or he's not. So there's a little bit of hysteria going on here. But look, he does need to participate in the debates because he doesn't want the last debate to be the last impression people have of him on a debate stage. So it's in his interest to debate, and it's in the American people's interest to have the candidates in person debating.
Karen?
He's got to debate, and it's the debate commission's call on what the format should be. I think at this point, I mean, the president was in the Oval Office yesterday, something that raised a lot of eyebrows among health experts for someone in his situation. So at this point, it shouldn't be just a question of his doctors. It should be a question of what public health experts believe, because if he shows up, it is not just his own health that is at risk, as we are seeing in what's going through the White House right now.
Let's talk about last night's debate. Karen, I'll start with you. This is going to go to both of you, but Karen, you start. Your impressions of last night's debate, and did this debate move the needle in any way?
I think not. I think there were few, if any, memorable moments, except for the cameo appearance by a fly. And I think basically this just reinforced both sides. And it was really the Trump-Pence ticket that actually needs a reset here, if you believe all the polls at this moment. So in that sense, they were the losers.
Mark?
Yeah, I think Pence won it on points. I think that I think Donald Trump should watch the videotape very carefully of how Mike Pence handled himself. He anticipated every attack that Kamala Harris was going to come up with and had a answer ready. And I think he was very effective. But Kamala Harris probably won because, one, she didn't make any catastrophic mistakes that can be used against her and Biden, and two, they're ahead. So the candidate who's behind needs to change the trajectory of the race. So I think that Mike Pence did an outstanding job. But Donald Trump needs to really study the way he did it, and particularly what he did is he knew what the lines of attack were going to be, and he waited and let her say the things that he was then going to rebut. Donald Trump didn't let Joe Biden get a word in edgewise, and so he never let him walk into any traps. So I think that Trump needs to go ahead and learn from this and let his opponent speak, because Joe Biden is going to do more damage to himself than Donald Trump is going to do to him by interrupting.
Karen, do you agree with Mark? Did Vice President Pence, quote, did he win it on points?
I just don't. I mean, I think they were both pretty cautious. As Dan pointed out a few moments ago, they were essentially, playing defense for their principles. And so I think it's kind of hard to score a debate of this sort, where essentially you have, two surrogates debating on points in that sense.
Karen, I want to get your reaction to something. I saw lots of traffic on Twitter, particularly towards the end of the debate, and there's quite a bit of commentary going on in the morning after the debate, talking about Vice President Pence's demeanor and his demeanor towards the moderator, Susan Page of USA Today, and his opponent, Senator Kamala Harris. Um, folks have called it condescending, mansplaining. Um, I'm trying to find the other words, but from your perspective, how did you view Vice President Pence's manner and tone and demeanor when it came to the women who were on the stage with him?
I'm going to be really interested in seeing, these are these things that you sometimes don't really fully understand for a day or two after a debate. But I do think there was a real danger here. He did two things. He completely ignored the female moderator's efforts to enforce rules that both of the campaigns had agreed to. And he also ignored what the questions were. They both did that to some extent, but I think Pence more so. So what I am skeptical that this is the kind of thing that, the suburban women sitting there watching it at home, and this is a big constituency that the Trump campaign is struggling with, would necessarily find that appealing.
Mark, I just want to read from, was channeling this piece in the Hollywood Reporter where the person writes, Pence appeared obnoxious, condescending, and not altogether present in the moment as he ran roughshod over the two women on the stage and kept addressing issues the moderator had moved on from. If Trump did his best to get his picture under the definition of, quote, alpha male in the dictionary last week, Pence's portrait might be found under mansplainer. Mark, to Karen's point about suburban women, do you not think that Vice President Pence hurt himself in the mission of trying to get suburban women to come back to President Trump, suburban white women to be specific?
I think that analysis is a huge stretch. The reality is he treated the moderators the way he would have treated the moderator the way he would have treated a male moderator. He treated his opponent the way he would have treated a male opponent. He just debated. The fact that he didn't exactly answer the questions that he was asked or used the opportunity to go back. I mean, any of us who've watched presidential and vice presidential debates for decades, everybody does that. It's nothing different. And by the way, Kamala Harris did the exact same thing. The very first question she was asked was, what would you do differently come January than the Trump administration? And she didn't answer it. She refused repeatedly to say whether the Harris Biden administration would pack the Supreme Court. Hold them both to the same standard. I think the sex of the moderator and the sex of the vice president should be irrelevant to scoring the debate.
But Karen? Is it irrelevant? To my mind, it's not. What do you think?
I don't. I mean, I think one of the dynamics here is that this is the first time that a woman of color has been on a national political party ticket. And it was also, Susan Page is a female moderator out there. I just don't think that women watching this are going to, and especially given the struggles that the Trump campaign has had with white women voters, suburban, especially college educated. I just don't think that people are watching this with this kind of, filter that doesn't take into effect gender and race.
Let me get you both to talk about what you think were the high points and the low points for each candidate. And Karen, I'll start with you. What was Vice President Pence's best moment? And also what was the best moment for Senator Harris, do you think?
I think in both cases, it was his defense of I actually think he was ready for the COVID questions. I mean, he wasn't necessarily telling the truth, but he had the line of attack. And I think hers were more when she would go after the questions that involved sort of decency and what kind of country we are. And in both cases, they were very much reflecting the message that was job one for their principles.
Mark?
I think for Harris's low point, actually, it's something she didn't say. The very first question was about whether, about COVID in a pandemic. And unlike Susan Page, she never said, hey, we wish the president a speedy recovery or anything like that. She just launched into a blistering attack. I think that missing grace note, the absence of that was glaring. And it really didn't take much to do that. I thought that I agree with Karen that the vice president was ready on the COVID. I thought he was very effective when she was trying to blame the president for 210,000 deaths, and he quoted Vice President Biden's own chief of staff, Ron Klain, saying that they completely blew it. They did everything possible wrong during the swine flu pandemic, and that it was just pure luck that that millions of people didn't die. That there was a picture of the ineffectiveness of response to a pandemic. And then, of course, the Supreme Court. This is such a central issue to the election. The Democratic line is that the Americans have to decide about this, but they will not tell the American people. This is now 2 debates in a row where they refuse to answer the question, will you pack the court? Which is it's not a normal thing. It's such an unprecedented idea. 150 years we've had 9 justices. That if they want to turn this into a referendum, they need to answer the question, because otherwise they don't have a mandate to do it.
So, Mark, then, in terms of not answering the question, then, does it not disturb you that Vice President Pence, like his boss, President Trump, refused to answer the question about whether they would accept a peaceful transfer of power? He didn't answer that question last night.
Sure, and of course, President Trump should have answered that.
What about Vice President Pence?
They both should have said that, of course, there will be a peaceful transfer of power. But I think that this whole thing about a peaceful transfer of power is a little hysterical. The Supreme Court is going, if this is litigated, the Supreme Court is going to decide. There's going to be a Bush v. Gore. There's going to be a decision, and it's going to be enforced. So there's not a single chance that there are going to be troops in the streets and a violent opposition to Donald Trump leaving the White House if he loses the election.
Mark, go ahead, Karen. Go ahead.
I think the question of packing the courts is a little hysterical too. If Biden takes office, packing the courts would be such an extreme measure that would take such a huge legislative and legal lift. I think it's one of those issues that is out there, perhaps in the fever swamps of the left, but it's just not likely to happen. And so I actually think that but the Biden campaign is wise not to address it.
Yeah, I mean, in order to add judges to the court, not only would Joe Biden have to win the presidency, but the Democrats would have to take over the Senate. And that's just, the politics, the electoral piece of it. Then let's say that were to happen, the politics, as Karen says, of getting that done would be a huge lift. Mark, you were very kind to point out a low note for Senator Harris. Could I get you to articulate a high point? What did she do well last night?
I thought that I thought she prosecuted the case on COVID very, very effectively. I thought that she made a lot of very effective points. I think her handling of the COVID pandemic was probably the most effective point she made, and she kept the debate focused for a while on that subject, which is where the Biden-Harris administration or the Biden-Harris team wants to keep the debate going. If we're talking about COVID, then Biden and Harris are winning. If we're talking about the economy and the Supreme Court, I think Trump and Pence are winning. And so I think she prosecuted that case effectively. And most importantly, honestly, she didn't make any major errors. When you're ahead, if you don't blow it, if you don't blow your lead, then you win.
Karen, this is the only vice presidential debate that there's going to be. There are supposed to be 2 other presidential debates. As I talked with Dan in the opening of this show, or just towards the end of our segment, the news broke that President Trump said he would not take part in a virtual debate. How confident are you that we're actually going to have 2 more debates in this presidential cycle?
No, I think we will. And I also think that the challenge with the virtual debate is that the next one is this town hall forum. So how you in a sort of Zoom or whatever they use situation give viewers a real sense of genuine interaction between these candidates and ordinary voters is going to be a challenge. But I just don't think it is tenable for either candidate to walk away from the debate, either debate.
Do you agree with that, Mark?
I do 100%. I think they have to have the debates, and I think Donald Trump is going to have to participate. I think they should be in person. It's a very simple question. Is he medically cleared? Is he shedding virus? If he has negative tests for COVID, there's no reason not to do it in person. If there is a net positive test, then of course you do a virtual debate instead.
Mark, but isn't it important to know when the president's last negative test was? And that's information that the White House isn't releasing.
It's not relevant to the debate. It's relevant generally. I think that it's well, I mean, his last negative test, yes, they right before the debate. If he doesn't have a negative test, then of course he shouldn't debate in person. I agree with that. Yes.
Karen, do we know for sure when the president's last negative test was? Last reporting I saw was we don't exactly know when that was, or do I have that wrong?
We do not know when it was. The other thing is, I think it's not just the president's health that is at issue here. I mean, if there are other people in that room, the president's team is going to have to agree to continue to wear masks inside, which they did not at that first debate. It was interesting last night, Karen Pence went on stage with no mask. I think there are many other issues that have to be taken into account, and that the Trump team is going to have to agree to for this to take place.
Okay, so we've got 2 more presidential debates. We've got less than 4 weeks. What day is this? 26 days, 26 days before Election Day. What are you, I mean, this presidential election cycle is unlike any I've ever seen. So you can't even predict what's going to happen. But what are you looking for in the next 26 days as markers for where this presidential campaign is going? I'll start with you, Karen.
I think the course of the coronavirus is right now the biggest determining factor of what remains of this election season. And the additional, both the economic and the health pain that it is causing in the country.
Mark?
I agree. I think that Donald Trump has an opportunity that so far he hasn't seized to take his personal experience with COVID and turn it around. I think he tried to do that the other day with the video he put out, where he talked about the therapeutic that he took, which was developed under Operation Warp Speed, and how impressive that was in terms of saving his own life and restoring his health, and the fact that he's going to make that available for free to every American who wants it or who needs it. But I think that we're also going to keep in mind, we're going to get a third quarter economic report, which is going to put the economy back front and center. And we're probably going to have, we're going to certainly have double-digit economic growth, probably the greatest economic growth we've had in any quarter. So that might put the economy back in the conversation, which is important for Trump.
One last quick question. We've got less than 2 minutes left. In terms of COVID and the impact on the administration, the president and the first lady aren't the only 2 people who have tested positive for the coronavirus. There are more than a dozen, maybe by now 24 people on staff who have tested positive. The Joint Chiefs of Staff are quarantining. How concerned should the American people be about the continuity of government when the coronavirus seems to be exploding within the upper ranks of the federal government? Mark, I'll start with you and we'll end with Karen.
Yeah, I think we need to be concerned about the fact that a lot of people have gotten sick in very important positions, but at the same time, we've got plenty of continuity of government plans in place. I don't think that we're going to have any, Vice President Pence, if anything, first of all, the president is not going to, now that he's had the virus and recovered from it, he's going to have some level of immunity for the immediate future. So I don't think we have a situation where he's not going to be able to execute the powers of his office.
Karen?
I think however, that the president's behavior at a moment where we all know that he is on powerful drugs, including steroids, is going to continue to receive scrutiny. I think that some of these middle of the night tweet storms are not exactly instilling confidence in the public. But again, Trump's baseline normal behavior isn't exactly, it's always so calm.
He did that before steroids, Karen.
Right, and we saw it in full effect at the first debate in Cleveland. Karen Tumulty, Marc Thiessen, we got to go. Thank you very much for coming on Washington Post Live's first look at the first and only vice presidential debate and a whole lot of other subjects. Thanks, you guys.
Great. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Washington Post Live will be back at 10 a.m. Eastern this morning for a special event about primary care in the time of COVID-19. And on Friday, former Democratic candidate for president Pete Buttigieg will be here to discuss his new book. You can learn about these events and more at WashingtonPostLive.com. As always, I'm Jonathan Capehart, opinion writer for the Washington Post. Thank you for watching Washington Post Live's First Look. Have a good morning.